Warning. This episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Give us 1 hour and we'll help you change the way you think about happiness. Harvesting Happiness with Lisa Cypers-Kamen is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Each week, Lisa spotlights diverse trendsetters and change agents who are the greatest contemporary thinkers and doers, devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. Your host, Lisa Cypers-Kamen, is a widely recognized applied positive psychology expert, author, documentary filmmaker, and lecturer specializing in optimal lifestyle management. Let's get to it. Here's Lisa.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us on today's show, where you will learn about entrepreneurs who think big and start simple, how to successfully launch your new business with my guest, Jim Price. This episode is part of the Positive Business Conference series recorded at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, where industry leaders gather to promote greater well-being and performance through connection with self, others, and society for the greater global good. To learn more about PBC, please visit thepositivebusinessconference.com. All righty then, let's get to it. Let's join my conversation with Jim Price that was recorded on location in Michigan. My guest today is Jim Price. Jim is a serial entrepreneur, author, and business educator. For over 2 decades, he's launched and led several tech-enabled businesses and delivered superior returns for his shareholders through multiple mergers and acquisitions and an IPO. Since 2003, Jim has also held a faculty position at Michigan Ross, where he teaches the startup craft to MBAs and mentors student entrepreneurs from all over the university. And his book is The Launch Lens, 20 Questions Every Entrepreneur Should Ask. And he presented today at the PBC Good and Bad Lessons on Company Culture from Silicon Valley. Hi, Jim. Nice to have you here.
It's great to be here, Lisa. Thanks.
Oh, this is my pleasure. Let's have some fun with this. Let's talk about Silicon Valley and the culture that we have come to know through the media.
Sure. Let's start with HBO, okay? With the Silicon Valley show. People ask me, my students, my friends will ask me, wow, that is such a funny show, but it's really scary. That can't be what it's really like. And I say, no, it's scary to me and to my friends because the verisimilitude is remarkable. It is dangerously close to the truth.
So it was nailed in the portrayal.
They nail it.
And let's just capture the essence of that for the listener who might not watch the HBO show.
So it's, you age out at age 35. So it's better to be under 30. You got to be a bro, that is a man, preferably a white man. So there's, if you will, bro culture. These guys actually sometimes live together in the same houses, build businesses together, and it's not tongue-in-cheek. They talk about everything they do is, dude, this is going to change the world, make the world a better place. And the rest of us are looking at this from the outside saying, you know, let's do a reality check on this. Do you realize that you're building an app that will help you jump the line at a bar? And you're saying you're going to, or
Dude,
whatever
this is going
it
to
is.
change the world.
Exactly. And yes, there are some things that will change the world for the better. There's renewable energy and so on. Some great inventions over the last 30, 40 years, but they're not all that way. So let's not deceive ourselves.
Got it. But what are the good parts of what goes on in the Silicon Valley? Because there is an esprit de corps.
Yep.
I think that one feels in that environment that is part of the plus side.
And the beautiful things I see it's not just in the Valley, but in entrepreneurship in general, Lisa, is the whole thing of what I call surfing with your knees bent. That if you were to look through the lens or the metaphor of surfing, it was hilarious. I was downstairs doing this workshop a few minutes ago.
In Michigan.
In Michigan.
Where people might not surf.
Well, and I asked for a show of hands. How many of you have surfed before? I'm not looking for experts. Nobody raised her or his hand. And I said,
surprise.
Good. I haven't either. But we've all seen it on TV, right? And we all understand that here are a few basics. And so I'm going to, as a non-surfer, I'm going to teach surfing for a couple minutes on your podcast, if I may.
Oh, please. Close your eyes, everybody.
Okay, close your eyes, click your heels. Okay, first of all, relax, stay loose, stay low. You know you're going to fall, dude. So understand that you're going to fall, embrace it, and then understand that when you get up onto the beach after that wipeout, you're going to compare notes. Lisa, the most amazing thing happened. That was tubular. And we
totally tubular.
Totally. But we learn so much more. And this sounds trite, but it's true. We learn so much more from our failures, the wipeouts, than from our successes. And if that is something that great entrepreneurs and the Silicon Valley culture, and more broadly speaking, American entrepreneurial culture has figured out, is that whole embracing failure, and it's okay to have that, if you will, useful scar tissue.
Oh, I've not heard that term.
She's wiped out a few times.
Useful scar tissue.
So she must know a bunch. I can learn from her.
Yeah. Something just dawned on me as you were speaking about the bro culture in Silicon Valley and the aging out by the mid 30s. I learned something the other day that busted a myth that I had about the prefrontal cortex of our brains, the last part of the brain that governs reason, accountability, decision making, and so on and so on. I thought that this part of the brain finished its development at 25. I've learned at another conference that I attended that that's not true. It becomes functional at age 25 and operational at 40.
Maybe for women. For men, it's probably
65.
Fair enough.
No, I know. But that's very interesting, right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that these young guys that are barely reaching the prime of their lives with less than full reasoning skills in their brains are aging out of that environment before they're able to even become actualized intellectually.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And being, shall we say, encouraged to retire out of that culture. And that's when, whether it's men or women, that's when we start reaching the more high traction. Wow, I've got the useful scar tissue. My what was it? The prefrontal
cortex.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. It's just above the left eye.
I knew that. I was just testing you.
Yes,
okay.
Last part of the brain in of a human brain to be developed.
Okay.
The most modern part of our brain.
Okay. And so that's the non-Neanderthal part. Well, what we're finding in Silicon Valley culture is this encouragement to think young, to push for, it sort of flips the paradigm of experience is good on its head.
Yes.
No, experience is not only bad, but that'll just drag you down. Which is similar to if you pop the plane up to 30,000 feet and you look at the big picture, you start looking at whole industries where, for example, you've got a person who will name unnamed, who's running a certain electric car company out in the valley.
Don't name names.
Don't name names. Okay. And he is basically pushing the idea that all these stupid car companies out in the Midwest, which happens to be, right here in Michigan, what could they possibly know? They've only been doing this for 100 years, building things that have over 100,000 parts, building 40 to 50 to 100,000 of those units, that is the cars, per month. And if something goes wrong, people can die. That's not an easy thing to do well. A lot of learning curve experience has gone into that. But the folks we'll name names, at Tesla are saying, oh, how hard can this be? Both making it better, faster, cheaper, cooler, but also that we can't learn anything from those ancient people, whether it's in Toyota City or in Detroit.
Yes.
Which is, they basically look down their noses at those who came before, whether they're individuals at the ground level or at 30,000 feet at the industry level.
But what's interesting about what you just shared is, okay, since we've named names, what Tesla did do was, by leading,
yes,
is challenge these other car companies to step up their game and get there faster.
And that is a beautiful thing,
That's a beautiful
Lisa.
thing.
Yes, that's a beautiful thing. And one of the things that established, shall we say, non-Silicon Valley companies do, or established organizations. It could be the University of Michigan or USC, right? It doesn't have to, it could be a nonprofit hospital system. Established organizations, established companies will tend to be extraordinarily risk averse the bigger they get, right?
Yep.
You hire in, and in disappearing ink on the back of your business card, and they don't even tell you this, it says, don't break the china. Don't screw up what has been built over the last 10, 50, 100 years, because we've got shareholders, we've got, 100,000 customers, whatever it is.
Keep the status quo.
That's right.
Don't grow too much.
Don't grow too much. Don't stick your neck out. And by the way, Lisa, you will move up in the organization, let's use a double negative, by not failing. Not by succeeding, not by taking risks. And so that's something, what they've done at Tesla is they've taken huge risks. I make fun of it or roll my eyes when it's, well, how hard can this be to build a car and to build tens of thousands per month and to build a gigafactory for batteries, but good for them.
Yeah.
Yes,
and
good for them, as you're saying.
Yeah. Good for them, but good for the challenge that it also makes to the others. I mean, I think that this is the exciting part of the art of possibility, which you were talking about.
Yes. Yeah. It's, they have challenged the art of the possible.
Yes.
And said, that's BS. The current status quo is BS. And so that is something that ability and cultural willingness, almost insistence on challenging the status quo, challenging the art of the possible, thinking big is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
As long as you have as founders, if you and I are founders of a new startup, as long as we have the intellectual humility to know that we don't have all the right answers. And that is what seems to have almost evaporated from Silicon Valley and scares me.
Well, I think it is a little scary.
Yeah.
Here comes that break. We'll be right back, and that is a guarantee.
To learn more about cultivating sustainable well-being at home and the office, visit harvestinghappiness.com and explore Lisa's experiential on-site brain fitness workshops, corporate programming, and speaking engagement services.
Welcome back to this special episode that it was recorded at the Positive Business Conference at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, where industry leaders gather to promote greater well-being and performance through connection with self, others, and society for the greater global good. Let's return to my conversation with Jim Price. You talk about, in your talk, you spoke of faking it till you make it, as the what not to do. Now, this is sort of contraindicated when we talk about sort of the positive attitude, sort of faking that all things are possible and we're going to do this, and then you sort of build it and they will come.
Yeah.
So this is the opposite belief.
Well, is it contraindicated, or the thing that's kind of scary about the fake it till you make it thing is, let's be blunt, is lying. It is telling untruths.
Yes. Well, lying is not okay. Yeah.
Okay, we're on the same page.
We're on the same. Lying is not okay, but faking it till you make it, in belief in oneself to be able to get there, is, I think, part of what helps us get there.
If we
Faith.
If we agree as co-founders on a dream that's a stretch, if we believe in that dream, we have a big vision, that's a wonderful thing. And one of the exquisite balancing acts of the great entrepreneurs, and if we're going to start a tech-enabled business, say, that we've got to achieve is this exquisite balance between that big vision and, think of it as version 10.0, which may change the world, and the version no, seriously. What does that version no, seriously look like? What is the high traction starting point that we could introduce and start learning from our initial customers and start building it out from there?
So that is learning to fly the plane while you're building it.
Yes.
Kind of, sort of.
Okay, you're scaring me now, but this is scary stuff.
But is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's taking calculated risks.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm trying to teach myself to not say yes, but I'll say yes and. Yes and.
That's lingo around here, the yes and.
Right?
Yeah.
So yes and we are only flying at 10 or 12 feet off the beach.
Right. We're not going to 30,000 feet yet.
We're the right sisters and brothers.
Yes.
And so let's take it one step at a time. We have invented flight. That's a good thing. It's going to change the world as we know it. But we are not going to put 300-person airliners at 35,000 feet yet.
Yes. Well,
that might be the big vision.
We have done that, and it has not worked out very well in the last couple of months.
There's that.
But we'll move on from there.
Yes.
I didn't mean to step into that territory, but
I know. That is scary stuff.
But that is kind of what happened.
But let me ask you, do you like, not to skip around, but I'm an ADD entrepreneur. Do you like my surfing metaphor?
I do. I do like the surfing metaphor, but not at the expense of our lives.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like going back to
I thought you were going to say not at the expense of this podcast.
Oh, no. I think on this podcast, anything flies and we can have fun with it as long as it's kind and legal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I go. Because that's really what we're about. At the end of the day,
I'm with you, Lisa.
We want to help everybody live a better life.
We were talking before we hit the go switch a little bit ago about how you and I are both doing things, and this sounds so trite, but doing things where we do what we love what we do, and therefore it doesn't feel like work.
No.
And yes, that sounds trite, but oh my gosh. And that's what I wish for all my entrepreneur buddies or my potential entrepreneur buddies who could be students. I sit on boards and so on, is you can have fun at this without burning out. You can be kind.
Yes.
You can be. At the end of the day, we're all judged by what people say about us behind our backs. We can't take the toys with us. Yeah. Fine. You made $1 billion, whatever. Can you build a culture that is positive? Even if I sell my companies, and I've sold a couple that pretty successfully, I actually just talked to 2 people this morning before my workshop here, who were former employees from a company I sold 21 years ago, and they are still there at the acquiring company.
Wow.
And one of the goals that my co-founder and I set for ourselves way back then was, let's make an impact on the community and let's create super cool jobs that people absolutely love.
Yes.
And I came away from those conversations saying, oh my gosh, we did it.
That's the work. That's ultimately the work. It's not the widget and it's not the money.
Yeah.
I think if we can be successful in our endeavors in that way, the rest will come.
And they're still in the same community. So we created great jobs for these people and their families in a community. They're still giving back. So it spawns a whole greater ecosystem.
And this is where I see the ocean or the lake
Yep.
separate. You know, when we talk about West
Are we
Coast.
parting the seas?
We're parting the seas or we're parting the lakes in the Midwest here.
Okay.
Because one of the things I find so attractive about this program, this conference, and the people that I meet here, and is this ethic of a solid citizenry. And I know that sounds very trite to say that, but those are the words that come to mind. And with solid citizenry comes integrity, comes humility, comes, caring for our fellow man and woman.
Yes.
That, your success is also my success.
Yes.
If I enable you, if I support you, then together we rise. This is very different than most West Coast mentality in terms of business. Not all.
The Valley was like that when I went to GSB, Stanford Business School.
But that was a long time ago.
That was okay.
We're dating ourselves here.
Yep. Right. That has changed, and there's this presumption elsewhere. I mean, even in places, entrepreneurial areas like New York, where you wouldn't necessarily expect it, it's really cool. People have each other's backs.
Yes.
Chicago. So here on the North Coast, Chicago, Cleveland, Ann Arbor, Detroit, we've got each other's backs. All boats rise if we can create a greater ecosystem. But part of that is it's not contradictory to say that on the one hand, we have a huge vision. We are going to be very aggressive and shoot for the moon, while at the same time being kind.
Yes.
While at the same time having the intellectual humility. I sometimes refer to it as I like to wear my ignorance on my sleeve, because that's the place from which I can brush it off.
Oh, so it's not sticky.
Yes.
Right? The ignorance is not sticky.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with Jim Price to learn more about him, his work, and his book, The Launch Lens, 20 Questions Every Entrepreneur Should Ask. Please visit the website about.me/Jim Price. On Twitter, he is at Jim Price Startup. We'll be right back, and that is a guarantee.
Did you know that happiness is actually good for your health? Happy people live longer, are more productive, and make better partners, parents, and professionals. Connect with us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and follow Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen for a daily dose of inspiration.
We are back, continuing my conversation with Jim Price that was recorded at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business Positive Business Conference, where industry leaders gather to promote greater well-being and performance through connection with self, others, and society for the greater global good. To learn more about the Positive Business Conference, please visit positivebusinessconference.com. Let's get back to my conversation with Jim. So, Jim, prior to the break, we were talking about sort of the culture that exists in Silicon Valley. And then we went to a place on the break where we were talking about life experiences. And you shared something that was, I think, extremely poignant and revelatory about another side or another dimension of you as a man, as a person that has shaped you.
My dear son, Ben, took his life 3 years ago. And we were talking about how parenting never stops.
Never.
And I know you have a child in college and, two. Okay. One of the things that I have learned from this, you learn from everything in life. And it sounds so silly or trite, hackneyed to say that we learn more from our failures than from our successes. And
I think that's true.
right.
I think it's a true thing.
But it is true. And we talk about that almost glibly at a business school. And as we talk about, as I teach entrepreneurship and I coach entrepreneurs, but it's true in, if you will, real life is that as we're building businesses, we've got to have the perspective that it's okay for us to go home at 5:15 p.m. We don't all have to work till 9 because we're raising kids. Little things like that are huge. I was building my first startup, 30 years ago, and I missed my dearly departed son Ben's first steps because I was selling B2B software in Japan at the time. And, the good news is I closed some sales. The bad news is I was missing out. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think that this is something that as I look at the world through the lens of shades of gray and textures, I think the best entrepreneurs and the best leaders are those who understand that the world is shaded by various shades of gray. And if you can walk into a room as a leader and you not only pretend that you don't have all the answers, you don't have the right answers.
Yes.
And it's not so much the older we get, but the more experience we allow ourselves to have, the more that becomes a reality. And people can read it from you as a leader that, wow, she wants me to contribute because she's not coming into this meeting thinking she has all the answers.
Yeah.
And part of that is just because as a leader, you walked into that room, if you will, as a grown-up with actual depth and texture. And so much of that doesn't come from your job.
No.
Right? It comes from your family. It comes from falling off the surfboard in other parts of your life.
Oh, yes.
And getting either a little bit dinged up or horribly hurt.
But, going back to leadership and entrepreneurship and building businesses, I mean, unfortunately, it's still, even in today's climate of, equal opportunity, there are not as many women in the C-suite as we would like. There still is inequity in those areas. And you were saying we need to flip that. How do we flip that?
Somebody smarter than I once said that if you think you're crazy, you're probably not. And who was that?
I don't know, but I do think I'm crazy, so I guess I'm okay.
Okay, well, you're yes, I'm with you. So the corollary to that is half the challenge in life in any sphere is knowing that you've got a problem. And so I think just recognizing that we've got an extraordinary problem. I mean,
it's a good problem, actually. It's a good problem to have. Like because now it's like, all right, this is a high quality problem. How do we get more women into these positions? Yes. That's a good problem.
And if you think about, I'm one of these people, I try to do the best I can and recognize just as is part of my ethos, and it's in my Launch Lens book. When you're building a business, start out not by boiling the ocean or trying to boil the ocean. Try to boil a pot of water really well first. And so if I take that to, on a personal level, we used to have fewer women proportionally going into entrepreneurship here at the business school than are represented in the broad MBA class. And I looked at that, and it's also fewer people of color. And I looked at that, and, so for those of you listening to the podcast, I tilted my head like a dog and said, what's going on here?
Yeah.
What's wrong with this picture? Well, half the challenge is understanding we've got a problem. So I set my goal and the goal of the Entrepreneurial Studies Department and the Zell Lurie Institute for Entrepreneurship. Let's figure out a way to get more women, more people of color, maybe disproportionately more than are in the general population here, into entrepreneurship. Why? Not for our self-serving purposes as the lecturers and professors or the staff people, but rather to provide them with a new set of lenses, knowing, wow, the art of the possible is broader than I thought it was. And as I'm coming out of undergrad or grad school, I now see the world with a new set of lenses. I wanted that. So I just started building building a reputation and differentially, pulling people into my office and saying, how are things going? What could we be doing better? And, reputations travel.
They do.
And I'm not even focusing on the individual reputation, but, there's a course you should take. That's,
yes.
That's an area you ought to be exploring. It's really fun and rewarding and could open up vistas for you later on in life.
Well, and also when you tap into whether it's women or people of color, you're going into other areas that are beyond white male entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. You're also bringing up the art of possibility for new problems to be solved.
Yes.
New ones.
New ones and ones that a bunch of 29-year-old bros sitting around a keg.
They're going to save the world with their app.
Right. So, who are going to save the world with their app, they're not going to come up with that. And, good grief. What is it? 52% of the world's population are women?
We know things. Just to put it just gently, we know things.
Or as they say in New York, we know stuff.
We know stuff.
We know people, we know stuff. Yeah. And so we ought to include use.
Yeah, youths.
Which is, use is the plural of you.
Yeah.
And I didn't always know that.
But it's youths.
Use.
But was it my cousin Vinny? When he's before the judge in the deep trial, he says youths. And the guy's like, what do you say? So YOOTS, youths.
Youths. Right. There is the boil the ocean thing that, if you're, what is the name of Steve Jobs' widow? Lorraine.
Lorraine.
But if you're somebody with power and money disproportionately, if you're Melinda Gates, maybe you can attack this from a top-down perspective. And meanwhile, all the rest of us shouldn't just say, oh, there's nothing I can do. There's a lot we can do.
There is a lot. And, I will tell you, someone comes to mind as you're describing the two of them, and they have tremendous social capital that opens doors to anything that they want to do, which is very, very valuable. Yeah. And then you think of somebody like Sarah Blakely, the woman that started Spanx, right? Yep. Here's a gal that had an idea like, what if... And by the way, I think this does save the world as a woman, and I'm saying it facetiously, to have the old-fashioned girdles that, smooths everything else, but you don't have to wear the pantyhose. Yeah. Lifesaver! And she worked on this and built an empire based upon solving a problem.
Yeah.
To the part of the population that is spending the money.
Yeah.
Right? Women are the buyers. They're the purchasers.
Yeah.
Here comes that break. We'll be right back.
Who says money can't buy happiness? Whether you are a skeptic or seeker, check out Lisa's new book. Are we happy yet? 8 Keys to Unlocking a Joyful Life. A boot camp manual for greater emotional fitness is available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, IndieBound, and HarvestingHappiness.com. Here's a truth bomb. Emotions are contagious, and happiness is a universally desired state. But we tend to forget that we all have the freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable each day, regardless of external circumstances. Explore the journey of human happiness, how to find it and keep it, with Lisa's documentary film, H Factor. Where is your heart? Visit HarvestingHappiness.com to learn more.
Happiness, yeah.
And we are back talking with Jim Price at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business at the Positive Business Conference, where industry leaders gather to promote greater well-being and performance through connection with self, others, and society for the greater global good. We are talking about entrepreneurs who think big and start simple. Let's get back to the conversation.
And so there you have an example of a woman entrepreneur. I don't know how she raised her money, but that's the other thing. I mean, there are so many angles to this. I can be differentially teaching and trying to mentor more women and people of color. There are others who are forming angel groups for early stage investment focused on women-run ventures, minority-run ventures, and so on. VC funds are starting.
Yes.
And you can't change the world overnight, but you can't be defeatist about it too. And so I like to focus on those things when I bring people into my class. You know, it's so interesting. I bring in people to speak in my class, and you create a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the women and the people of color will often come up and just privately say, you know, I just want to say thank you, because 2/3 or all of the sampling of entrepreneurs, of lawyers, and of venture capital investors that you brought in were not white bros. Thank God.
Thank goodness.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it doesn't, that was not hard.
And there's nothing wrong with white bros. Let's not bash the bros. That's the other side of it, you know?
I'm one of them.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, and I'm pale as the day is long. I even have a bro. I have a brother in Philadelphia, but I'm not a frat boy.
Just to qualify that.
Yeah. I'm not that kind of bro.
You're not that kind of bro. And you don't live in Silicon Valley.
Used to. Don't anymore.
What about thinking big? Because I think if you were to give a tip, would thinking big be like one of the best nuggets you could give people?
Absolutely. Let me give you an example. One of my favorite student entrepreneurs I'm working with the last couple of years, I've had the privilege of working with Gabrielle, better known as Gabby. She just turned 20, and she's just started her third business. I mean, you can't make this stuff up anymore.
Wow.
You know, kids these days, what are they doing?
Yeah, they're in their phones all the time. But not Gabby. Not Gabby.
Oh my gosh. So she's starting her third business. It's in, without divulging too much, because it's still in stealth mode, I guess, but it's in the area of frozen desserts. I rolled my eyes at first until she explained what she had in mind, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this could be a huge success. She started running by a couple of us who wear one hat as an entrepreneur in residence here, and she started running by us her thoughts, her pitch deck, her forecasts, and I basically said, Gabs, you're not thinking big enough. And she said, well, you know, I was counting on my this is paraphrasing. I was counting on my fingers and toes how many pints we could sell and how many crates we could ship to how many Whole Foodses or whatever, right? And I came up to, you know, let's call it a couple million by the end of the 5th year of her forecast. And I said, come on. Start thinking orders of magnitude bigger. Add on zeros. How big is the frozen desserts business in the U.S.? Roughly a lot. There was a better answer she had, but
I'm sure. And especially if it's
because
something
she's much better at math than I.
Right?
Yes.
Especially if it's something that is health conscious, that we don't feel guilty, which my guess is it is, without knowing anything and going out of stealth mode.
Yes. And so you're absolutely right, Lisa. And there's a good example of, you can go Midwest with this, if you will. Midwest, nice. And aw shucks, we're going to, and it's not just the Midwest. It's everywhere outside of Silicon Valley, it seems. And, you know, maybe, you know, Boulder and Austin, people will tend to shy away from thinking huge. Huge. These accents are killing us, you know? But I think that if you allow yourself to think big, you may not get there, but you create stretch goals for yourself.
Yeah. It's the daring. It's the stretch.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I was the slowest kid in terms of short distances on my high school and absolutely on my college track team. I never lost a hurdles race. And that's because I was thinking big. Well, okay, so let's work on what can I can practice harder. I can work on my starting technique. I can work on going over the first hurdle technique. I can work on, all these things. And so I allowed myself to think big. I was a D3 athlete, not a D1 athlete, but you know what? If I had thought small and thought, well, I'm a slow white kid, which I was, and looked at it through that lens, nothing would have happened.
Yeah. So it's the daring to think big that allows one to stretch oneself. And who are we not to sort of shine our brilliance? I think that's the other part of it, is that each one of us has this pilot light, this capacity for greatness on some level. It doesn't matter what, and it's different for each person. And if we tamp that down, if we don't ignite that and fuel that, we will never achieve happiness.
Let's go back to this whole thing about what is the art of the possible. That each of us has some area of brilliance, and society, school, jobs in the workplace can kind of grind you down and make you think that your social life, can make us all feel like, well, I'm kind of meh, I'm kind of mediocre. Actually, each of us is extraordinary at a few things. Yeah. And what I find is that here's a way to flip it around. Something that you'll find at business schools, you find this in the workplace, everywhere. It's really good to tear down somebody else's idea. Really easy to do so. It's really hard to listen to somebody else's ill-formed idea and say, okay, Lisa, that's kind of interesting. Now, have you thought about approaching it this way? What would be really cool is if you could run that by so-and-so. She could really add a lot to that. And by lifting you up with that idea, it's a completely different ethos. And you end up with just different results. And if we can all do that, allow ourselves the luxury of doing that with ourselves. Look in the mirror and say, this could allow yourselves a smile. This could actually work.
Yes.
And whom can I surround myself with? Wear your ignorance on your sleeve. Whom can I surround myself with? Who can I run this by to figure this out and flesh out this idea? And then flip it around. Can you behave that way toward others?
Well, this is the generosity of spirit part, which I think is integral to the success of any venture, right?
Yes.
Because none of us does any of this alone. This podcast doesn't get produced by myself alone. Yes. The work, the companies that you've started and you've sold, none of that is fueled by you alone. You might have spearheaded it. It might have been your vision, but there's a tribe behind you making it happen.
All the smart people as I think about it.
Yeah, well, hopefully. Yes. I pray that the people that work on this are better, bigger, brighter, smarter than me, because it makes the whole thing a better quality.
So I'm a recovering jazz musician, and what makes jazz for me, Lisa, in building teams, building businesses, is surrounding myself with people who are smarter than I, who on a bad day with a wicked hangover can fall out of bed and it's like, wow, what that person is doing is magical. Yeah. They do things in a certain sphere that are complementary to what I'm good at. And if I can surround myself with those A-list, A-plus list people who are just magically good at other things that complement what I bring to the table, that's jazz.
And that's smart.
But it takes a certain humility, which is also being self-possessed. That I don't have to go into every room being the smartest person in the room or trying to pretend, right?
And that's the authenticity piece, the being willing to just show up in truth, being authentic, being willing to be vulnerable. I mean, I think that's a word that has come up a lot in the last couple of days here. Mm-hmm. That vulnerability, which has been made very fashionable by the likes of Brene Brown, who's incredible. Yes. But there is something to that. The willingness to just wear your heart on your sleeve, knowing full well you could fail or it could be broken, And the upside of doing so is there could be such a tremendous reward beyond money that it makes it worth the risk.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And maybe that's the spot right there. To learn more about the work of Jim Price and his book, which I'll give you the title again, The Launch Lens, 20 Questions Every Entrepreneur Should Ask, please go to about.me/Jim Price. That has a landing page that will guide you to the everything about Jim Price. On Twitter at Jim Price Startup. And the talk that he gave today at the Positive Business Conference was Good and Bad Lessons on Company Culture from Silicon Valley. And thank you for taking the time to talk about the art of possible with me.
Lisa, this has been such a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers-Kamen, and along with my guest Jim Price, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of action. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Go out and rock your day.
Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime and anywhere from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes via our free app or from our libraries at toginet.com, iTunes, Google Play, and other fine podcast platforms. To learn more about Lisa's global consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Spread more joy by liking us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and following Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen. Harvesting Happiness is produced in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU Radio Malibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.